The last of his kind. The sky burned crimson as the Galactic Empire's warships descended upon the peaceful planet of Zereth. The invasion was swift and merciless. The Empire had deemed the Zerathi unfit for their new order, an obstacle in their path of expansion. Within hours, cities were reduced to rubble, and the once thriving alien race was nearly exterminated. Kalos, a young Zerathi, barely escaped. He had been exploring the outer forest when the first bombs fell. By the time he returned, his home was gone, his family, his people, all reduced to ashes. He watched from the shadows as Imperial soldiers executed the last survivors. That night, under the shattered moons of his planet, he swore vengeance. Years passed. Kalos became a ghost, a shadow in the galaxy. He trained in ancient combat techniques, learned to pilot stolen Imperial ships, and became a name whispered in fear among the Empire's officers. He sabotaged supply lines, assassinated high-ranking officials, and freed enslaved alien races, but one name remained on his list, the Supreme Commander who ordered the purge of his people. Kalos knew that killing him would not bring his family back, but it would send a message: the last Zerathi was still alive, and he would never stop fighting. The hunt had begun. Would you like me to expand on this? Maybe turn it into a full story or add some. Here's a short sci-fi story based on your idea. The air was thick with smoke and ash, the once thriving jungle world of Valtrex 9 reduced to burning ruins. Cries of the dying echoed through the night as the Galactic Empire's soldiers marched through the devastation, their metallic boots crushing embers beneath them. Kale crouched behind a fallen tree, his heart pounding. He was the last of his kind, the only survivor of the Trovani, a peaceful alien species that had called this planet home for millennia. He had watched his parents vaporized before his eyes, their bodies turned to nothing by the Empire's orbital bombardment. His sister, still clutching his hand, had been torn away, her terrified screams lost in the chaos. He never saw her again. Now, Kale's blue-skinned hands trembled as he gripped the crude energy rifle he had salvaged from a fallen soldier. He was no warrior. His people had never needed weapons before today. But survival was no longer a choice, it was his duty. A squad of soldiers approached, scanning the wreckage for survivors. Their black helmets reflected the burning sky, faceless, heartless. Kale took a deep breath. He had never killed before. But he wasn't just fighting for revenge, he was fighting to make sure the Trovani were never forgotten. He stepped from the shadows, raising his rifle. The Empire had taken everything from him. Now, he would take something back. The battle for his people had just begun. The Galactic Imperium had spread across the stars like a wildfire, conquering and annihilating anything that stood in its way. Planets that resisted were reduced to ashes. Races that refused to submit were erased. One such race was the Valkyrie, proud, peaceful beings whose crystalline wings shimmered under their twin suns. They had no armies, no weapons, only wisdom and beauty. That had not saved them. Zen, a young Valkyrie, had been off-world when the Imperium arrived. By the time he returned, his home was nothing but blackened ruins. His people were gone. Slaughtered. He found his mother's necklace among the rubble, the last remnant of a once thriving civilization fueled by grief and rage. Zen vowed revenge. He could not challenge the Imperium head-on. One man against an empire was suicide. But he could be a ghost in their machine, a shadow in their ranks. He infiltrated their systems, sabotaging supply lines, assassinating key officers, and igniting rebellions across the stars. The Imperium called him the Phantom of Valkyrie. But vengeance came with a price. As he struck back, the Imperium tightened its grip, punishing innocent worlds in response. The question haunted him: was his vengeance worth the cost? Could he become more than a destroyer? Then, he found something unexpected: another survivor. A young Valkyrie girl hidden away by an old scavenger. She was the last hope of his people. Now, Zen faced a choice: continue his path of destruction or protect the only family he had left. The fate of the Valkyrie rested in his hands. Would you like me to expand on this, add more characters, or change the tone?